Hi and welcome back. Today I'm going to be talking about my thoughts about why I think sketching and keeping a sketchbook is such an important part of watercolour painting, or any kind of painting for that matter, but because I mostly do watercolour painting, I'll be talking about it from that point of view. And while I share my thoughts, I shall be sketching this beautiful barn from a photograph that I found on Pixabay. The reference is in the description below. In this instance, I'm going to be talking about the act of sketching for the sake of sketching, not for doing, say, a line sketch to start you off for your watercolour painting, or for working out thumbnail sketches to try and sort of work out the best composition, or maybe to try a tonal sketch to try out tonal value. This sort of sketching is just, as I said, sketching for the sake of sketching. And often these sorts of sketches can turn into paintings, or they can lead from one thing to another and inspire you to sort of dive off in a different direction for a piece of art or something. But the starting point here that I want to talk about is sketching just with very simple equipment: paper, pencil, maybe an eraser, maybe a couple of other tools. It forces us to look at things. It forces us to then think about what we're looking at. Because when we create two-dimensional art like painting or drawing or anything like that, we're trying to, especially with landscape painting, we're trying to translate something incredibly three-dimensional, like the scene in front of us or in a photograph or something like that, onto a flat piece of paper. And it's quite a challenging thing to do, to pull off that sort of illusion. And very often there's a world of difference between our painting and what we have in our head of what we want to put onto the page, of how we want our painting to look. And I think the main reason for this is it's very easy for us to conjure up amazing images in our minds, especially if we're inspired by the scenery around us or photographs that we've seen, that sort of thing, or just our imagination. But then it's not so natural to be able to translate. In fact, it's not at all natural to be able to either draw it or paint it or translate it onto the page in any of those ways. That's not something, it's not a gift, it's not a talent, it's not something that we're born with. It's something that we have to learn, and we have to find ways to be able to express what we see in our mind's eye on the paper. And I think the main way we can develop the skills that we need and learn the skills that we need for any creative endeavour is by doing. And with painting, I think if you sketch a lot, you'll find that as you sketch, as you try to make sense of the world around you on paper, even if your drawings and sketches are quite crude to start with, the more you sketch, the more your eye and brain and hand coordination will begin to develop. You will slowly but surely see the marks that you're making and the type of marks that work in your painting to create or sketch to create certain effects, and the ones that don't work. And you will learn from experience and slowly build up a sort of stylistic repertoire of mark-making techniques, which you will then be able to bring to play in your painting. So I think what I'm trying to say is sketching is something that we can it's very cheap. We can sketch wherever we are, and we can sketch with pencils, pens, on the back of an old envelope, paper. We can just sketch anywhere as soon as we get any ideas or see something that we like. And it's something that's not fixed. It's not, there's no set way of sketching. I mean, there are obviously sort of some techniques that you can learn, like cross-hatching, shading, all those kinds of things, varying the pressure of your pencil, maybe erasing out highlights, things like that. There's all these techniques that you can pick up and that you can learn. But the most important thing with sketching, I think, is slowly but surely building up some sort of a connection between, as I said, the eye, the brain and the hand, so that you build up some sort of muscle memory, and then sketching almost becomes natural. It becomes something you don't really have to think too much about. It's something that begins to flow. You can begin to translate or find ways to translate what you see in front of you and what you see in your mind's eye onto the page through practice. Now, this takes time, and it also takes being patient and accepting that you're not always going to like the outcome of your sketches. They're not always going to work. But then there's nothing wrong with that, because you will have learnt what it is that you don't like about that particular sketch. And the next time that you sketch a similar scene, you'll probably remember that, learn from it, move on, and try and avoid making those sorts of marks and progress forward with your sketching. And of course, as you progress with your sketching, you'll start to think about things. It will raise certain questions like, why isn't my building looking right? Why is that area looking sort of bland, and things like that. So then that will lead you to start researching things like tonal value and contrast and perspective, things like that. So how to kind of work out and get an accurate 1 point or 2 point perspective, so the buildings all look right and everything recedes back into the distance appropriately, all those sorts of things. So that's pretty much why I think sketching for the sake of sketching can really, really help us with our painting, in that it can give us a really good framework on which to then build our paintings, so that we learn to understand things like tonal values, contrast, perspective and things like that, and then we can bring that to bear in our more developed artwork. And of course, another really good reason for sketching, keeping a sketchbook, apart from being able to build up and progress and learn your skills in drawing, painting, translating 3D things onto two-dimensional space, is also note-taking. It's the act of making quick notes or quite sort of reasonably detailed but loose sketches that really look into every aspect of the subject that you're sketching, in order to then take that back to the studio and turn into a painting, so that you don't need to be in front of the scene. You've got all the notes and the sketch, all the lights, the darks, the composition has been worked out in your finished sketch, so that you're then ready to paint. I've just started a new basic loose sketching course or series over on Patreon, and there's a fully narrated real-time tutorial that covers this sketch that I've been showing you here, and it comes in two parts. The first part talks about basic sketching techniques, such as hatching, cross-hatching, shading, etc., etc. And then in part two, we do this sketch from start to finish using the techniques that I've discussed in part one. So if you think that's might be something that you might be interested in. I think there's 2 episodes so far of the sketching series, and of course hundreds of other videos for painting, sketching, things like that as well on Patreon. But if you think you might be interested in that, then please follow the link below to take a look at my Patreon page. If you do think of joining us, then please leave it until after the 1st of September, because when you join, you're charged straight away, and then you'll be charged again on the 1st of each month until you decide that you want to leave. And I'm hoping to build on this sketching series because I think it complements all the painting tutorials that I have. And there's lots of exclusive tutorials on Patreon, including a basics series, which I've just started, Watercolour for Beginners, which our beginners are finding very, very useful. Anyway, that's enough with plugging Patreon. There's plenty of content, free content here on YouTube as well. So, don't worry if you can't come over to Patreon. It's not important. There's plenty of us over there. But I always post at least 2, maybe 3 videos here on YouTube every week. So to sum up, like anything in life, you have to work at it if you want to learn to draw. But drawing and sketching and painting is something that anybody can learn if they want to, and they have to want to. And they have to be prepared to fail at certain things to start with, and to accept that it's not something you can immediately be really proficient at. It's something that you need to work at. And to be able to look at your work impersonally in a way, so that you can then analyse what's gone wrong, but without being sort of upset that it's gone wrong. And once you've worked out what it is that you don't like or what doesn't work, and thought about it, and thought about, maybe looking a bit more carefully at your reference, or maybe researching how to find the vanishing point so that you can check on the perspective of your buildings, that sort of thing, then you can move forward and correct the mistakes, or maybe discover there might be other techniques that you need to learn in order to take your sketching and therefore your painting a little bit further. Obviously sometimes you're not going to need sketching at all for certain types of painting. If you feel like experimenting or trying something really spontaneous and free or abstract, then it's probably beneficial not to start with any kind of a preconceived idea or a sketch, and just to forge straight into creating on the page, and just kind of see what happens. But by the same token, if you're used to sketching out ideas without judging yourself and just really going for it and exploring and experimenting on the page from a sketching point of view, then as soon as you're presented with that blank piece of paper for something more abstract, you're not going to be daunted. You're going to be used to that clean white sheet of paper in front of you, and it won't intimidate you. Just be able to just go straight in and really enjoy the process. Well, I hope this has been useful in some way. I think I've been very lazy over the last few years and not done as much sketching as I could have done. But that's something over the last few months I've been trying to resolve, and I've been sketching an awful lot more and really, really enjoying the process. And I've found that it's brought my work along, my personal work along, and helped me to progress. I'm feeling that I'm getting my buildings especially are becoming much more realistic, and I think I'm getting a bit more depth in general into my paintings as well. So I'm really feeling the benefit of building up my sketchbooks and doing a lot more sketching. It's building up that confidence and that sort of muscle memory in my hand, so that as I look at something, my hand sort of almost instinctively now has learned how to translate what I see onto the page. Well, I hope that was useful or interesting. If you've got any thoughts or comments, I'd love to hear from you in the comments below and see what you think, what your ideas are and thoughts are about sketching, and whether or not you think it's an important part of the creative journey. Thanks so much for watching. Please give us a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. And thank you so much to my wonderful Patreon group who support this channel. I'll see you again soon. Happy painting and happy sketching. Take care then and stay safe. Bye.